I need you to knock some sense into me. I'm sure you can.
Yeah, I don't know.
I enjoy listening to you. I don't always agree with everything.
All right, enough of this persiflage.
So, you want my question?
I'm certainly not going to get myself in trouble by telling you what to do.
That makes great sense. Gosh, that's good.
Did I overwhelm you with words and wisdom?
I've got 7 kids. I feel like I could call you every day.
Wait, you're telling me I'm wrong? Disconnect.
Yes, I am, Dr. Ray.
You just need to tune in to Dr. Ray, honey. He's got all the answers.
Am I right or am I right?
Probably.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
Training 16-inch psychological guns on the problems of life. Those big 16-inch guns on the Missouri, the USS Missouri. I saw an interesting stat today that Missouri was commissioned. I forget. It was commissioned in 1944. That was where they signed the peace treaty with the Japanese on the USS Missouri. And it was decommissioned in 1992. That was the last battleship, big battle wagon. So anyway, I just kind of threw that out because it's part of my trivia preparation. This is The Doctor Is In and Look Back Friday, where Andrew Kruchek, in his very capable hands, edits previous calls because for various reasons we want to re-air them so I can talk some more. And I talk after the call is done playing. And then I jump in and make some comments and make some extrapolations and maybe add a few more details and sometimes very much notice why I didn't go in a different direction with that call. And it occurs to me as I listen to the call that I missed something. So that's all in play on Look Back Friday. Andrew Kruchek does more than just produce a show. He finds a lot of, I'm going to use the word great articles only in the sense that they're not great as I see them as positively helpful. They're great for making comments that might, I hope, be helpful instead. And he found one. Now I'm looking at this article here, and I kind of perused it very quickly. And as I perused it, I thought, I can comment on so much of this. So, Andrew, this is a warning. I don't know how far I'm going to go into this first segment. And I may even take it into the second segment because there's so much here. And it is so relatable to my listening audience of 184 people. The title of the article is No Contact. Now, that is a phrase, that's a term that I haven't really been familiar with that summarizes the estrangement of the younger generation from their parents. No contact. Why family estrangement is on the rise for young people. Now, as I go through this article, you're going to see the tone of this article very, very clearly. Many of the people who call this program or even come to my office are good, decent people. They tried to raise their children well. They were faith-filled people. And they've watched their kids not only leave the faith, but blame their parents at various levels for their parenting. This article comes from a pretty much 180-degree opposite perspective. Subtitle: Young adults are quicker to cut off toxic, I hate that word, toxic family members to choose peace. Right there, just in that phrase, you now have been prepared for the tone of this article. Young adults are quicker to cut off toxic family members to choose peace. Not peace within themselves, but no, I have to get rid of you to have peace. Well, let's just start taking this article apart. The author, a woman named, what's her name here? Tiara Coleman. Only 1 in 5 people attribute the split directly to political differences. Well, that's understandable because in our case, the sample size that we have, which again is probably not the broad-based sample size, it's a lot of religious differences. All right, here we go. younger generations are becoming more proactive. All right, here's another one of those toned words, proactive. In other words, I'm making a move here that I need to move in protecting their peace. And this is so blatant, by estranging themselves from family members whom they consider to be toxic. Boy, talk about a cliched sentence. Viral social media videos and recent op-eds point to the pervasiveness of the trend. As many young people choose to share their path of separation from relatives, a process known as going no contact. All right, first paragraph introduces it. I'm making the move. This is a good move for my peace. I got to get you people out of my life because that's the only way I can have peace. I can't have peace by being more tolerant. I can't have peace by looking at you and having some forgiveness and mercy in my heart. No, and you don't even have to be religious to do that. Just human interaction. All right. Family estrangement where, quote, family members become strangers to one another like intimacy reversed, end quote, is still considered, quote, somewhat taboo, said the New Yorker. But in recent years, quote, advocates for the estranged, in other words, the people who are writing off their parents, have begun a concerted effort to normalize it. In other words, yeah, this is okay. This is good. This is healthy. This is typical. They believe that eliminating the stigma would allow, quote, more people to get out of unhealthy family relationships without shame. When I've talked about this, I've also said that, yes, there are some relationships with parents that really are severely disturbed. These parents, in many, many respects, are, in fact, either dangerous or so disturbed and manipulative that it can't be dealt with. There are those. This article seems to take the tone that pretty much when someone decides to write off their parents, it is for the very reason that these people are toxic and the kids have finally decided to realize it and have the courage to do it. While there is, quote, relatively little data on the subject, some psychologists point to anecdotal evidence that an increasing number of young people are cutting out their parents. Other experts think we are simply becoming more transparent about it. So it's you got the old, is it really happening or are we just becoming more aware of it? Let's see. In a survey conducted in 2019, sociologist Carl Pillemer found that 20% of Americans were estranged from a relative. I would want to know what that is in faith-filled families. Now, again, even though a lot of the young adults are doing this because they don't like their parents' religion and they've been co-opted by the culture and misshaped by the culture. Another study found that on average, people first became estranged from family members in their 20s. Yep, that's pretty much my experience. Recently, discussion about this topic has, quote, just exploded, said Yasmin Kirkez, the co-founder of Family Support Resources, a group for helping people dealing with estrangement and other family issues. All right, let's see. I'd keep going here. Society promotes, I'm still quoting the article, society promotes the message that is good for people to have a family at all costs, when it could be healthier for people to, quote, have a life beyond their family relationships and to find a new sense of family with friends or peer groups. Becca Bland, the founder of nonprofit estrangement group Stand Alone, is quoted. All right, so you see the tone here. Now, you got to get away from these horrible parents because they're toxic. Now, I don't doubt there are situations like that. Of course, I'm a psychologist, I see it all the time. What is disturbing to me is an awful lot of the young people that I see, and I think a lot of people could make this comment, it don't have to be me, it can be any therapist, are cutting off their parents for reasons that I don't like you, reasons that I don't like how you think, I don't like the way that I was raised, I don't like at all so much about my childhood. part of the reason, and this I think is so true, and it harkens back to a chapter I wrote in one of my earliest books, is my child normal? And I talked about the broadening expanse of what we call pathological. Part of the reason estrangement has become more common is, quote, changing notions of what constitutes harmful, abusive, traumatizing, or neglectful behavior, said Joshua Coleman, a clinical psychologist and the author of Rules of Estrangement, Why Adult Children Cut Ties. I agree with this. Coleman cited research that showed how the definition of trauma has expanded in the past 3 decades to include experiences once considered harmless. Well, maybe they were harmless. See, that the notion here is that, well, we finally realized they're pathological. We thought they were okay. You know, like a parent who yells at you. That's not harmless. No, it isn't. But it's not pathological either. The bar for qualifying as a trauma today is much lower. Yeah, and there should be recognition that in many respects, trauma is self-defined. Doing so, there are times when cutting ties with your family is necessary to protect your peace. It may be, but also to protect your peace may be a shift in the way you look at someone with mercy or forgiveness or tolerance. The concept comes down to, quote, a person saying, this relationship has become so unmanageable for me and staying in contact is no longer an option. The question is, why is it so unmanageable for me? It isn't automatically unmanageable for me because I declare it so. It is unmanageable for me because there may be things about me that is making it unmanageable for me, and that if I change some of them, for example, not to be quite so distressed about some of the things my mother says, then it isn't quite so unmanageable. It may not be pleasant, but it's not unmanageable, and it's not toxic. Few people have gone the no-contact route actually cite political differences as their reason. The main reason given is something the relative said or did. Okay, I got that. If I searched hard enough, I'd find things my mom and dad said or did. Some practices they had, some discipline they did. Yeah, they spanked me. Boy, you believe a lot of experts, that's enough. That's abuse. Cut it off. Ultimately, there are several main reasons why someone should make the choice to go no contact, said Wondermine, a psychotherapist. Almost all experts agree. Where I don't know where that statement's coming from, but that's just a statement. Almost all experts agree that going no contact with someone who is consistently causing harm, whether it's verbal abuse, emotional abuse, manipulation, or other cruel treatment, might be your best option to stay safe. What kind of safe? I know a lot of people who call opinionatedness from a mother or father or an in-law or a verbal abuse. They call it opinionated. It's a verbal abuse. Well, that's a pretty strong phrase, isn't it? That's one of the phrases I used in my How to Get Along Well with Almost Everybody book, which is, yeah, you got to watch your language here, because the more extreme you make your language, the more likely it is that you look at that person who's doing this as just not possible to have peace with. Okay, we've suggested this on the show. Communicating through a card, a letter, or a neutral third party could help set the stage for an eventual reconnection. All right, now that was how they quote. All right, this is going to definitely be a monologue in one of my podcasts. It didn't go quite as long as I thought. This is Dr. Ray. I've said over and over again in so many ways, the experts, and I use that as a big umbrella term, I know it's a generalization, but in so many ways, Some of their ideas and their notions just push us further and further into pathology or intolerance because we label so many more things unendurable. Many people have parents that aren't the best in the world, aren't the easiest to get along with, are opinionated, maybe difficult, maybe critical. Okay, we got that. But then you got this whole bevy of experts coming along saying they're toxic. They're toxic. And the only way you'll ever be at peace is to be separated from them. But you know the problem with that? Whatever it is in intolerance toward your parents, you're taking with you. So the parents are out of your life. Okay, you may have gotten rid of one stressor as you define it. But if this is how you deal with people who are unpleasant or difficult, you're going to run into some of this again. Well, they don't have the impact on me that my parents did. No, but the same mindset that is convincing you that your parents are not salvageable is a dangerous one. There's a lot of people in my life that were I to be peevish and what's the word I'm looking for? Prickly. I would say, I don't want to have anything to do with them. That's too much effort. Too much effort to do something with them. But one, they're people in my close social circle, so I don't want to do that. And two, they're not in my close social circle, but I still enjoy them. I still enjoy their contacts. Still fun. Yeah, there's got to be a little more gone with the flow among us before we quickly point to pathology that I have to separate myself from. Oh gosh, Andrew, I'm not even going to get a call in here now because I went on too long. I've got 5 minutes before the hard break. What's the suggestion here? Try it? Yeah. All right, let's squeeze in Marilyn, as Andrew suggested, and respond after the break. Marilyn from New Jersey, 13-year-old granddaughter, took off.
I have one grandchild, and she's 13. She'll be 14 the end of August. Her father abandoned her when she was 10 years old. And as much as personally I think it was a great idea that he did, because it would have been nothing but turmoil for the way he behaves, etc., that was still her daddy. And she is now being taught at home, but not by her mom. Her mom has to work. She's being taught by teachers on computer. And this is going to be her second year, her first year of high school at home. She's on Zoloft. She's on anti-anxiety. And
why all that stuff? Why all that stuff?
She's gotten extremely heavy. She started getting really heavy when puberty hit. So I'm just wondering, my daughter's an agnostic. She was raised Catholic, but the other two children, she was even an altar server. And my granddaughter doesn't even believe in God. Well, how could she? She doesn't even know God. She was never taught anything about God. She used to say Thor was her God. But I'm just wondering, what will become of her? What
I don't know.
The statistics.
Oh, statistics-wise, it's not good.
Right.
She got several things gone against her. I can't pinpoint what effect, what ramifications, future will be on your granddaughter because Daddy left. Is he any part of her life at all?
No, not at all.
He's gone.
She tried to get him. It was on her birthday. He abandoned her on her 10th birthday, and she kept trying to get him for weeks and weeks and weeks, and he never answered. So, no, not at all. He's totally out.
You didn't say this, but my guess would be that relationship wasn't the greatest even when he was there.
Correct.
So, in fact, you've got a cauldron of all kinds of effects. You got a young lady who at age 13 already is on medication for her anxiety, her depression, which is basically her discontent and probably maladjustment in life.
Correct.
Mom really doesn't have any kind of plumb line in terms of morality, guided by God. She has her own, but whatever that might be, who knows?
Not at all. she's had people sleep at the home with her, and Ellen knew about that years. They got divorced when she was 6 years old.
You're gonna be Marilyn. You're gonna be the stabilizing influence in that. You're gonna be the one that's probably at some level going to take this young lady under your wing.
I tried. She doesn't like me. She hasn't liked me from probably the day she was born, and
wow.
that makes me feel terrible.
What's wrong? What's wrong with you? You too religious? What?
No, I think probably because of parenting. You know, when I was taking care of her when COVID was going on, I had to go to the house for 9 months, basically. And, I mean, I just parented. And she's totally permissive. Her mother lets her basically do whatever she wants.
Oh, boy, from what you're describing, this is a sad picture. This is a sad picture. And oh, boy. You may be in a position 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now to pick up some more pieces, because it doesn't sound like the trajectory of this is anything that would be encouraging. Whoa. No. And the sad thing of it is, the direct influence of Dad leaving is probably not as much as all these other factors.
That's right.
That are intertwined. Hopefully she'll allow you at some point back into her life as grandma, the stable one in her life. It may happen. You're gonna have to, at this point, be kind of an observer as how it goes. Wow. The longer grandma talked, the more bad signs gathered. It seems like everything is stacked against this young girl having a stable adult life. The risk of getting pregnant, very high. Drugs, high. Cutting, high. Quitting school, high. I'm going to talk about this after. It brings up, I think, a larger societal reality. There's sadly more and more kids like this in our society, and that to me is one of the tragic red flags as to where we could be headed.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. U.S. Justice Department attorneys are arguing that plaintiffs from Louisiana do not have standing to sue the government over established abortion pill rules. They connect that with the FDA needing to take another year or more to complete an abortion pill safety review. Pro-life advocates and Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill say the current policy harms women, enables coercion, and undermines Louisiana and other states' laws. Abortion industry stats claim well over 600,000 chemical abortions annually, and polls show most Americans oppose mail-order abortions. The Trump White House is rolling out another reversal of Biden-era abortion policy, this time at the Department of Veteran Affairs. After the Dobbs decision, abortion advocates with President Biden sought to use veterans' hospitals to offer abortions in states with strong pro-life restrictions. Now that action has played in reverse. No more abortions at VA facilities. This is Life News Radio. Remember to pray. When you pray for civil order, when you pray for Congress, when you pray that legislators will open their minds and reject assaults on the dignity of the human person, your prayer is part of a culture of life. We wage a spiritual battle through prayer. Pray for a culture of life. In other headlines, the College Fix says Georgetown University may have had its students intern at a late-term abortion business. And Thomas More Society attorneys say laws in an affluent suburban New York county, Westchester County, express an overt desire to put pro-life people in prison for merely implying that they desire others to avoid abortion. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
Well, hi, Dr. A.
Okay, so we had to break up the look back here. because I rambled on a little too long in the first segment and a half. Marilyn called from New Jersey. A 13-year-old granddaughter just is at home, and the dad took off back when she was 10. Now, Marilyn listed very quickly a bit of a social history. Daughter is at home, pretty much unsupervised because mother has to work. She's taking multiple medications for depression, anxiety, and she is extremely overweight, which could indicate a number of things. She doesn't believe in God. There is no God. Marilyn cites that this is, I think, her daughter, who has no plumb line because she, too, doesn't acknowledge God, his existence, declares him unusable to her. There's a stack, just a huge stack. Some years ago when I was out of the Catholic Church for about a year, I had a Bible study in the local county jail, and the pastor there was an ex-Catholic, probably a hostile ex-Catholic, who allowed me to come to the jail to have a Bible study with the guys, because at that time I was in an independent evangelical church, and he said the only reason he allowed me is because I was no longer in the Catholic Church. A little bit of side information. I listened to the histories of the guys. Basically, pretty much paralleled Marilyn's granddaughter. I mean, just early on in life, instability, lack of any kind of moral compass, presence of God, if it was there, it was, oh man, at best, hit and miss. The ones that came to the Bible study often talked about an aunt or a grandparent who took them to church once or twice, or who was a stable person in their lives. And that sounds kind of like Marilyn's case, except the daughter, or the granddaughter, will not allow much contact with Marilyn because Marilyn had to live there for 9 months during COVID and attempted to parent this young lady, and the young lady just flat out didn't like it. And Marilyn made the observation that at this point, there is really not much guidance going on. And the tragedy here, she asked, what's going to become of her? I said, I can't know that, obviously. But if you go with base rate predictions, if you want to use that phrase, which means when you have a certain sample size and someone resembles that sample size, you can kind of predict somewhat accurately the outcome. And it's just bad here. You would hope that at some point in this young person's life, she, at the very least, sees what she's doing to her life and that this is no way to live. But what I've seen is the things that most likely to bring about a total about face in existence is a Christian conversion. And I haven't been the only one to see it. I mean, a lot of people see it, comment on it. Yeah, they've lived a kind of wretched existence, self-destructive existence. And somehow, some way, God entered their world. And they began to climb out of the pit that they were in. And you got to hope that for this little girl, this is going to happen. Because Grandma, it's like she's sitting on a hilltop watching a train come around the bend. And there is a major broken piece of track. And Grandma, looking at the train so far on the track anyway, sees is going to hit that broken piece of track. And it's going to send that train in every direction. And you can't know what direction this little girl's going to go in. But it doesn't sound good at all. And it's a commentary on what happens when you say there is no God, or if there is, he's irrelevant to the way that I live my life, and therefore I will, in fact, make my own choices, my own directions. I will raise my kids a certain way. And then ultimately, the real tragedy is that that kid, in more cases than not, is going to crash and burn. In my business, and I think in anybody's business who's involved with family dynamics, you almost have to steel yourself against these tragedies, or you couldn't function. I would have long quit being a psychologist who directly deals with people. I find something else to do. Somehow, some way, you got to take these kinds of situations, and as soon as you're done hearing about them, you do your best not to think about them. That sounds cold, but you can't function otherwise. Chances are this little girl is headed for a bad end. I mean, a really bad end. She's probably a much higher than normal suicide risk. Already she's obviously incredibly discontent because she's on antidepressant medication. She's on anti-anxiety medication. She probably doesn't like her bodily self-image because Grandma says she's overweight. We don't know how much, but nowadays when you say somebody's overweight, you're usually talking 50, 80, 100 pounds overweight. You're not talking 20 pounds. So it's a situation where it's just going to keep heading downhill. 3 years from now, when this young lady's 16, who knows who she's going to be hanging with? Who knows what guy's going to enter her life and mess it up even further? Who knows what kind of gender confusion she could have? Who knows? But it wouldn't be surprising. See, that's the, it wouldn't be a shock. You would look at it like I looked at the guys in my Bible study at the county jail and said, no wonder they're here. If half of what they're telling me is legit, no wonder they're here. They just got older and their bad choices had bigger ramifications. When you're 13, there's a certain limit upon how much self-destruction you can embark upon. But when you get older, you got all kinds of options out there. It's a conveyor belt coming by your eyes on bad stuff to do. And it ultimately leads to your own destruction. And unfortunately, sadly, many people don't realize that until it's too late. Until they're either dead, leave this world by their own hand, or create such a drug dependency that it's only a matter of time. True tragedies of a society that says God doesn't belong here, or at least of enough in a society that say God doesn't belong here. We'll make it on our own. And in the words of, what was his name, Dr. Phil, how's that working out for you? Hi, it's Dr. Ray Guarendi. Program Dr. is in co-production, EWTN Global Capital Radio Network, some 400 to 500 stations, with my listening audience approaching 200 people. Yeah, now that's not counting the overseas people. We're heard in a lot of countries. Australia's a big one. I got close to 7 or 8 people listening in Australia. Hello. We don't have, when I do Australia, I don't have a walkabout. I have a talkabout. So, also on Ave Maria Radio Communications, where the show is produced there in Ann Arbor with Andrew Kruchek, my producer man. Been on the air, what do you got, Andrew? Something like 23 years now on air? Yeah, that's close to, at my last calculation, that's close to 24 people. Somewhat helped. Somewhat. Now, somewhat can be anywhere from 2% to about 40%. Somewhat helped. All right, this is Look Back Friday. I'm looking at the clock here. Let's take Mike from Texas. He's concerned. His wife, he believes, is showing early signs of dementia.
I'm having issues with self-control. I've been married for 52 years. My wife is getting early signs of dementia, and I get so frustrated that I feel so guilty at night that I don't know what it is that I'm doing wrong. I mean, I do get irritated at myself and not at her because I can't understand what this disease is doing to her. And when I pray at night, I ask for forgiveness for being so mean, but how does one deal with self-control when your loved one is going downhill, for the lack of a better word?
What you're saying, Mike, is I don't want this to be happening. I don't want my wife to be like this. She's too young to be like this, and this would be called early onset, probably Alzheimer's, or there could be some other type of dementia, but early onset. And typically, the earlier the onset, the faster it progresses, which is a bad word to use to describe it.
Right.
In the first stages of this, the spouse or the caretaker wrestles with how much can they control this? How much do they actually know what they're doing? For example, if she asks you the same question 4 times, and you say, I answered that. I told you 3 times where we were going. And you think to yourself, she's still capable. She shows a lot of capability in a whole lot of other areas. She should know. I think the best way to lower your frustration, Mike, is to recognize that it's going to be very patchy. And your wife will do some things directly because of the illness. And it may look like that she doesn't need to be this way because she still has a lot of capability left. But in fact, if you interpret it as a lot of the illness talking, you won't get so frustrated. You'll realize that in many respects she's as scared as you are about all this because she knows something is happening. And it's scaring the wits out of her. Has she said anything like that to you?
No, she's just she's herself. It's just that repeating, doing the same thing over and over. It's just that, her mom lived with us for 11 and a half years with dementia. And she passed away here in my house. And my wife took care of her. And I see what she learned from taking care of her mom. And I saw it, but I don't get it. I mean, it just. I know it's going to get worse before it gets better, but I myself wanted to deal with it. I don't know how.
Well, Mike, it's going to get worse before it gets worse is a better way to put it. You have to recognize that this is an illness that's going to go in one direction, downhill.
Right.
And if you continue to tell yourself that, if you recognize it, if you say, my wife is going to do a lot of very frustrating things that I wish I could correct, or I wish she would understand if I remind her and tell her and explain to her. But in fact, it's going to become real obvious that she can't. When you realize that she can't, you won't be quite as upset. It'd be like demanding if she had a broken leg. Well, come on. Why can't you walk? Well, my leg, it won't let me. Oh, come on. And I think that's a little bit what's happening with the dementia. You want to say, come on. She's going, I can't. Now, she's not saying that in so many words, but her behavior indicates that.
I like what you said about it's the illness talking to me, or it's the illness doing those things.
Yes, it is.
I never thought of it that way. And I think that I can understand now that it's not her telling me those things. It's the illness, which I appreciate you saying that. I understand that.
Her mind is not working at full capacity, Mike. It's not. And so much of what she says and does is a result of that illness. The frustration with caregivers early on with the first indications of a dementia. And Alzheimer's is the most common dementia, but there are 50-some dementias. Alzheimer's accounts for about half of them. The first signs of the dementia are the scariest and in some respects the most frustrating, because the attitude of, don't be like this. Stop it. Stop it. Don't do this. I don't want to see this happen. There's that very powerful emotional grip that makes it likely to say, you asked me that before. I told you before. You asked me before. You asked me just a minute ago. In other words, I'll correct you so that you straighten up. That's not going to happen. You have to recognize, well, you don't have to do anything. It's just a way of saying it would be well if you recognized that this is the way it is. Now, part of the problem in this early stages is that it's fragmented. She may remember something she told you very clearly a minute ago, but 6 minutes from now, she'll tell you something else and repeat herself. It's easy to think, wait a minute. She knew it then. Why is she not knowing it now? She's being lazy? No. When the disease progresses further and it gets uglier, at some level for a lot of folks, it gets easier to recognize that it is the disease that's talking, not their spouse. Because there's so much that is involved now, so much at play. Not only memory problems, but personality problems and confusion problems, supervision problems, self-care problems. All these things are kicking in all over the place. And you recognize, okay, sadly, tragically, this is not the person I knew at all. Her brain is taking her from me. Her soul's not, but the soul has to play the brain. And when the brain ain't working, it's like a bad piano. You can be the greatest concert pianist in the world, but you're playing a bad piano, you aren't going to sound very good. So, at the end, in some respects, even though the signs are more impactful, the frustration may be less because you more clearly recognize what's going on. In the early stages, when there's some personality changes or memory frustrations. I've told this story before. My aunt, she was in her early 90s, and we had it ongoing for 2 or 3 years, and I'm so glad we did it. Had breakfast with my mom and dad and some of the people that they went to Mass with over at St. Anthony's, parish of Mother Angelica in Canton, Ohio. We go out to breakfast. And Aunt Esther was in a very assisted living, and she was getting very confused. I pick her up. We'd start down about a 15-minute drive. And she'd say to me, so who all's going to be there? And I'd say, well, my mom, my mom and my dad, and Dolores. You remember Dolores from church? Yeah, I remember Dolores. Okay. Well, I think Aunt Eva might be there. No, that wouldn't be right because Aunt Eva passed away before Aunt Esther did. But a couple of the other relatives are often there. And I said, my son Pete will be there. He usually comes with us. Oh, that's so nice. That's so nice. And then I'd count to maybe 10. And by the time I got to 10, Aunt Esther would say, so who all's going to be there? Well, my mom and my dad. And I just went through the litany of people. Oh, that's so nice. I just really like that. I look forward to that so much. 7, 8, 9, 10. So who else is going to be there? All the way there. And I knew it. And I just told her. And I viewed that as the way we interacted. It's the way it was. Never would I say, Aunt Esther, I just told you. No, because to her, I didn't just tell her To her, that was gone. That part of her brain that consolidated memories from 1 minute to the next was badly damaged. And those memories just did not take root. So she asked again. And I think this gentleman, once he becomes convinced that, as he loved it, you never know what you're going to say to help somebody. And apparently it resonated with him. That's the illness talking, not your wife. And she may only be 26% less competent than she was at 100, but that's a big 26%. And that 26% can show itself at any time. And the other 74%, she's functioning okay, which creates the illusion that the 26% is more under her control than it appears. No, that's not so. I better take a break. No time to do anything in these last couple minutes but to ramble. I like to think it is guided rambling. I like to think it is targeted rambling. I like to think it is helpful rambling. One of the earliest signs of an incipient, I like using that word, dementia is memory problems, short-term memory problems. But another sign, and it's the one that's much harder for people to adjust to as a caretaker, is personality problems. I remember my grandmother, who would never, ever, ever, ever tell an off-color joke. One day, just spouted this off-color joke and just busted up. And I thought to myself, because she was in her early 90s at the time, or maybe late 80s, I thought to myself, the governor is slipping. And as it turned out, that was an early sign. So the personality changes are the most confusing because oftentimes they're severe exaggerations of earlier characteristics. For example, I've heard people say that their spouse, the guy, wants to see everything that she brought home from shopping, grocery shopping, and wants to see the receipt. And he takes the receipt and he compares it to everything she brought home in a very scrutinizing, really kind of unpleasant way. And an early interpretation to that, somebody might say, well, he's always been kind of a penny pincher. You know, he's just getting that way as he gets older. No, sometimes there's a qualitative difference. It isn't just a more extreme example of an earlier personality characteristic. It's a shift. It's a shift. He never did that. Yeah, he watched the money, but he never questioned what she bought. He never scrutinized it. He never said, I have to see every receipt, and why did you buy this one when this could have been? And no, that never happened. So it's hard to interpret those early personality changes. Only looking back do you sometimes see, that's kind of where it started. It's dementia. Cruel stuff, tricky stuff. Thank you for joining me. Good Lord permitting, I'll see you Monday. And when we have E-Person Monday, go after some of the emails that you folks send me. And I appreciate it so very much. And I thank Andrew Kruchek for all he does there in Ann Arbor. So, let the music begin. Where is it, Andrew?
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.